Hey, welcome to Tuesday's Candid Conversation. Today we are being joined by Martin Reed. His handle is Personal Victory. He is a personal trainer, a certified Pilates instructor, and has gone through many different interesting things in his career. Hey, there he is. From social work to having been a football player, and segueing into Pilates of all things. So I'm really excited to speak with him about his experience, especially as a man in the world of Pilates. And we will be getting started in just a moment. Hey everybody. Martin, make sure you ask to join me so that we can get our candid conversation started. Hey everybody. I'm just waiting for Martin to ask to join as a participant. Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome everybody. Martin, if you're there, make sure you ask to join as a participant. Hi Ian, nice to see you. Hi, Season Pilates. There we go. Here he is.
Mira, it's so nice to see you.
Hey, there you go.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. You're used to being on the other end, right? Where you're having everybody come into
Absolutely.
your core conversation.
Yes. That used to be in the lower screen, actually.
Yeah, right? It's like so nice to have you join us for Candid Conversation on Tuesday. There is just so much to unpack and so much that I want to ask you about in terms of your experience, but maybe you can start by telling everybody in 3 or 4 words who you are.
In 3 or 4 words.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I am a movement specialist.
That's it. Okay. And that's fair. I mean, given everything I read in your kind of resume about who you are, it is true. After all the years of work you've done in personal training, Martin was certified by, I want to say, Peak Pilates in 2008. And then
Yes.
8 years later, you did an additional certification via Lily Viola, and you did a mentorship with Chris Robinson.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
let's back up a little bit. And
Sure.
why don't you tell me how you discovered Pilates?
Absolutely. Um, there's kind of two parts to that story of how I found Pilates. One was when I was in high school and playing football, I used to get a lot of injuries with my back. And I went to a chiro, and the chiro would simply say, just, well, stop playing football and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
So you're like, no. As a
Yeah.
teenager, I'm not going to do that. Um, so, I continued to play. I had some good physios and stuff when I was at Waterloo. And then when I came back, the massage therapist I was going to was also a Pilates instructor. So she was the one who was doing group Pilates classes, and I started doing those. And the more that I went to Pilates, the less I had to go to the chiro.
Were
Like,
you the only man in those classes?
yeah, her husband was there occasionally, but for the most part, it would be just like me, right? So,
Okay.
but I just recognized how it was totally helping my body, and
Yeah.
and like once a week became like every other week became, in terms of just going to the chiro, it was like less and less. The more Pilates I did, the less I needed to go to the
Right. It
chiro.
was like maintenance
Right.
for your body.
Yeah, I call it prehab instead of rehab.
Got
Right.
it.
So, and that's not to take away from chiros. There's some really, really great chiros, and there's one in this clinic
For
here,
sure.
and that when you understand, the body and that relationship of bone, nerve, and muscle, it's different than when someone's just saying, okay, just stop doing stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I took a special interest class there. I did like a mat certification, and then fast forward to when I'm working for a big box gym. I had an opportunity to do my peak certification there, where now I'm doing
Were you
understanding.
doing personal training at that gym?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so getting to Pilates there was thinking, okay, as a personal trainer and a sport conditioning specialist,
Yeah.
now I have like this inside lane because I have this unique skill set that no other personal trainer has. So there's
For
that one
sure.
level of it. There's also the fact that there's no men teaching it. And
Right.
then, and thirdly, the fact that there was no visible minorities. Like I would be the only, I had not seen any men, let alone any black men teaching Pilates.
Totally.
So I figured all these things were going to work in my favor if I wanted to kind of own that space as a trainer. or
Definitely.
as and that's why I changed it to movement specialist, because it's not just Pilates, it's not just sport conditioning, it's not just
Yeah.
Pilates. They're all part of this whole greater dialogue about fitness and movement. So I wanted to give space for all of those, or give expression to all those pieces of the puzzle.
So, as someone who, you were an athlete and then you were into strength training and, as someone who was really in that mindset, in that space, and also moving your body that way, how did it feel to move your body in a Pilates way? And then was there anything that you encountered that you're like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right in my body?
It's actually, that's a great question, because like, it was almost like the opposite of that, where I'm thinking about these big, powerful, performance-oriented movements,
Right,
and then Pilates was kicking my butt, because it
right,
was the minutia of it. Like I'm getting muscles to fire that never fired, and I was able to
right.
get away with, for my whole life, never using my
The
psoas
right
in a
muscle.
way. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that really got me into it. When I was doing a Pilates for athletes class that a friend of mine was teaching, and she had us doing this one exercise, and I could not do it on the left side of my body. And
Right.
I was so determined to own this whole system of exercise because it owned me that day,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
I can totally see that. I mean, even as a dancer, I danced professionally and I went into Pilates after my career ended. And I remember putting in, it was a VHS. Okay, that's how old I am, guys. I put the VHS in. It was Moira Stott doing an advanced mat workout. I was in my prime as a
mhm.
dancer and I couldn't do some of the workout. I was like,
Yes,
what is going on here? So yeah, I agree. Pilates is certainly really humbling, even when you're
humbling,
at your prime as an athlete or as a
right?
dancer.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about what your career has been like as a man in Pilates, as a
Mm.
minority? Do you feel that there is any major challenges ahead for the Pilates community internationally in regards to this?
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective. It's a Canadian perspective, when a lot of stuff that we see in social media is a United States perspective
True.
or a European perspective, right? So there's all these different perspectives. So I am not the Black person who was raised in this polarized black-white, super overt racist space, which impacts how I look at the world. I grew up in Toronto and Mississauga, right?
Yeah.
So it is very diverse, and there's a lot of cultural expression. So my experience in the space, yeah, there's systemic racism, and I won't don't want to diminish the fact that that happens, but being able to be in this space as a Pilates instructor, as a personal trainer, the way that I look, even as much as we don't want to make it about vanity,
Yeah.
those are the things that do attract certain people. And then they
Hmm.
see an athletic body doing Pilates, they're like, okay, so maybe I can do that too, as
Right.
opposed to seeing a dancer body, right? Like, I mean, if I was a dancer and then as a guy, you see me doing the splits and I can put my foot behind my ear, and you're like, well, I'll never be able to do that. So this whole
Yeah.
thing isn't for me, right? So I don't know. Like, I think that it has helped me just to be that guy that can identify with the dad, the weekend warrior, that person who's strapped to their desk like 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
they it connects with them. So I've always found that there has been space for my Pilates to have expression, with my personal training guys. My guys that I train with personal training are all open to trying Pilates because it worked for
They see that you
me
do
and they
it.
see that I do it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I
it's,
think you're a really good avatar for people that feel like, oh, Pilates isn't for me, and that's one of the reasons I was so excited to have you join for Candid Conversation, is to really feel like there are men out there that are really gifted at Pilates, not just as practitioners, but as teachers. And maybe if you're okay with segueing a little bit that way,
sure, yes.
tell me about why you selected Peak. It sounds like it just happened to be a good fit given where you were, but I'll let you speak to it. And then
Sure.
tell me about what made you decide to do the extended certification that is more classical.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you're right. Like, that was the opportunity that was presented to me. Peak was the one that was there, and
Right.
so that I just took it because that was it. And Pilates, and for me at that point, Pilates was Pilates. I didn't know that there was a difference, and there's these camps, and there's like, and now I understand
What? There's these
yes,
camps?
there's camps. I know. And it's crazy how like I was just on my conversation earlier today, I was saying it's almost like you didn't realize that there was that many denominations of church. I thought church was church, right? But now there's a Baptist church and the Pentecostal and there's a Catholic one. It's like I thought we're all going to church.
Going to
So
church.
yeah, so but now that's the whole thing with this Pilates world. I just did that because that was the Pilates that was presented to me. And I liked it, and I had some great instructors and people I stay in contact with now who now I understand are pretty big deal in what they do and where they've been.
Like Chris Robinson.
Right, exactly. Well, Chris Robinson came after, right? So I did peak, and I thought that was, a lot, and it was very helpful for me to understand the language of the system. And then Lily mentioned to me that she's going to have Chris Robinson coming in to
shout out to Lily, everybody.
Yes.
I love Lily Viola.
Yeah, so she was the one who said, like, Martin, you would love to learn from this guy. He's an athletic guy. He played, he's a martial artist. He ran track. He did all these sports,
Right.
and to have a Black man who is an athlete as his base,
awesome.
It was fantastic. It so inspired me. It made the whole system make sense. So I know how to operate all the equipment because I did my certification. Now I got a chance to really dive deep into understanding classically what the intent of exercises were.
Yeah.
What is the dialogue between the exercises? If I can't get someone to do something here, where can they find it in the work somewhere else? So he was able to really, explain to me and help me to understand within my body how all the exercises are connected. It's a system. So there's no mat Pilates and then reformer Pilates and then tower Pilates. Right. Those differentiations are for the sake of selling a program or to get people into the door for certain things. But Pilates is Pilates.
Yeah. Totally.
Right. So I'm not knocking people who sell a Pilates mat Pilates class, but like, let's not just call it a mat Pilates class. That's Pilates. And if that's all you're doing, that is Pilates. And if you get a chance to do that same exercise on the ladder barrel, the tower, and then the chair, and then you recognize, wait a minute, I'm in the same shape for all of these. You're like, yes, now you're doing Pilates.
You're making the connection.
You're making the connection.
Yeah.
So Chris was the one who was able to help me to make sense of the system.
So now that you've been exposed to Peak, which actually I'm not familiar with Peak very much at all. So I'm going to say, would it be more on the contemporary side?
I personally would still say it's on the classical side. Some people wouldn't agree with me on that, but having done it first and then getting really deep into the classical, I see where the connections and where the origins were and how they were actually setting up exercises to understand the full expression of it. Yeah.
And so I guess I believe in your studio you have Gratz, right?
It's Gratz equipment. And it's
Gratz equipment.
Yeah, and there's a Stott ladder barrel just to keep things interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really honest. When I've actually never been on a Gratz ladder barrel, I don't think. When I'm on a ladder barrel that's wooden, I get a little bit nervous. I don't know why. Maybe I've been in a couple that have been very lovingly used, but with the Stott one, because it's metal, and I'm sure the Gratz as well, they just feel like I can do anything here, and it's not gonna fall apart. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I'm just gonna go to my questions here. So I guess, what drew you to Pilates as a kind of something that you wanted to teach in tandem with the personal training, and how do you kind of bridge them, or do you keep them exclusive?
No, I love that question. Like, really, I'm not just saying I love that question to every question that you ask. Like, that actually is a really good question.
I'm well prepared.
Because people do put Pilates in a silo. And I think that, having the personal training has informed and improved my Pilates practice, and and vice versa, right? So now I'm looking at my personal training clients with the eye of a Pilates instructor. And actually that was a really good compliment that I got from an old friend of mine who I used to work with back in the day. And I went and did my apprenticeship, and then we reconnected a couple of years later. And when I taught her, she was saying, like, back in the day, you taught Pilates like a personal trainer. Now you teach it with the eye of a Pilates instructor.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually felt really good because I know how many hours, like it's a 600-hour apprenticeship and it took me probably like 8. Like I failed one part of it. Like it was hard. It was really, really
It
hard.
is hard. It is hard.
So to
Yeah, and
finally get that
I think that,
affirmation, you know?
yeah, having like dug into it, and it sounds like you had a lot of mentorship over the years. I
Mhm.
did also, and I just couldn't imagine becoming a Pilates instructor without that mentorship.
Yes.
It's so important.
It is, it is. So yeah, so back to the original question, I really feel
Yeah,
like I do tie them in, and it because I look at it as like overall as a movement specialist, I'm looking at what the person's goals are, what their objectives are, and where do I need to take them, not just within this the system applies, but within this whole building to get
yeah,
them to their goal,
yeah.
right? So that's why I
So
love that.
I have a bit of a, I don't know what to call it. I have a bit of a problem with something that's happening on Instagram, and I want to
Okay,
talk to you about it,
sure,
which
let's
is
go.
that when I go to demonstrate something that I think is really awesome on Instagram, let's say the side leg lift series. I
Yeah,
love the side leg lift series.
yes,
But when I demo it and then I post on Instagram, I just look like, a woman who's lifting her leg and lowering her leg. And
yes,
then I see a big burly guy with like a beard, and he might be like holding a kettlebell, and he's doing the exact same side leg lift series, but like now it's cool. So
yes.
I wanted to kind of get your perspective on perhaps individuals that might not even know that they're doing Pilates movements,
Hmm.
and kind of popularizing it, but then like it's basically Pilates. Like for example, this movement here that we see in the double leg kick, like this is
Yes,
all over Instagram as like the coolest shoulder thing ever. And I'm like,
right.
but it's Pilates.
That's
So do you have these revelations, and how do you feel about that?
that was impressive shoulder mobility, by the way, because mine would not be half as pretty as that. But um, that happens, and I feel like that's where I try, if I'm trying to separate myself from the pack in terms of just being another personal trainer or just being another Pilates person out there, I think
Yeah,
that's when I start to geek out with my description of what's happening.
right.
Right? Because a lot of times, if you were to ask me, how do I get men into Pilates? Is sometimes there's people who really need to be really technical about what we're doing. So I can say, I'm just lifting and lowering my leg, and I can do that all day. But can I do that
Right.
with extension? Can I do that without this part? Can I do it when engaging this? Now we're activating your glute min and not just your glute. Like you start to
Right.
throw in words that they may or may not understand, but then they start to appreciate that, like how technical that move is, and then how good you are as a mover to make something that complicated look easy,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that it all
Yeah.
comes in the description because yeah, I can do a double leg lift, right? Like I can do a leg raise all day long for my hip flexors,
Sure.
or I can engage my core and actually do the
Work the
work,
abdominals.
right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is important to get that description across and to cue properly, which is like a whole nother can of worms.
Hmm.
One of the big observations that clients give is that they find if they're coming to Pilates for the first time from, let's say, any other fitness thing, whether it's
Yes.
cycling or swimming or strength training, they often find Pilates to be very heavy in the cueing.
Hmm.
Would you say that that is a thing, or is it just perhaps instruction? How do you manage giving instruction to your clients?
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because that was one of my biggest takeaways from doing my peak certification. And the way that it was taught, and one of the words that I take away from is Pam Garcia was our instructor, Pam
Okay,
Garcia, and she used the term an economy of words.
love it. Yes,
And I love that phraseology. Like that's exactly what it is. We
it's
need an
perfect.
economy of words. How do I get you to do what I want you to do in as few words as possible? And
Yes.
even if I think about that from the days of me doing like teaching a Tabata class or a boot camp or something, if I can't explain to you the next exercise in our circuit in 9 seconds or less, we have to move on. So that sense of having an economy of words translated from running these high pace, high intensity classes to my Pilates where it's like, okay, legs up,
So
squeeze
many
her,
people
go.
are like commenting, like, yes, economy of
Yes, I see that.
words.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. So yes, we can over cue. And one of my guys I've been training for a while, when I got him into Pilates from doing our personal training, he said, like, his takeaway was that I didn't give him enough success moments.
I've heard that too from a lot of my male students.
Right. And what he meant by that was, it's like, okay, doing our double leg, lower lift. Okay, so hands behind your head, lift your legs up, lower your legs, now reach. Can you go from here? Squeeze this. So I'm giving him like a million cues. And then when I finished giving him those millions cues, it's like, okay, and now the next exercise is, it's like, well, wait a minute, did I do any of that right? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So they get
Yeah.
that sense of, if you cue, move on to the next exercise, cue, they never get any wins. Like, you got to give them a W somewhere in there.
Yes.
Right?
Shout it from the mountains. Yes,
Yeah.
more wins for sure. I think Pilates is really challenging. Even when I've done private sessions with master trainers, sometimes I feel that way, like, oh my God, like I can't, like I'm not good enough. You know, there's a lot of that because Pilates is so focused on alignment and good execution.
Yeah.
So that is so, so important and such a huge takeaway. I love that.
Yeah. And pick your battles too, like Stephanie's comment there is perfect. Like, yeah, we have to choose certain things and then continue. Like next week we can add this into, okay, we didn't even layer in the breathing. Let's get to that after this sort of thing, instead of just throwing 700 cues for an exercise at one time. So
yeah, the brain can only process so much. You know, we forget that.
Right.
And we never want to feel like, I think, rapid fire.
Mm-hmm,
you know, when I used to teach teacher training, I used to say that if you can't sip water and like take a good sip of water and put it down and let your student move, then like you're over cueing.
Yes, exactly.
But we've all been there.
Yep, exactly. And then the other comment there too, sorry, I feel like I've just went into
totally, let's do it.
A compliment clients when they do something really well. Yes, but at the same time, don't say good if it's not good.
Yep.
Right? Like we get into good.
Just be quiet.
Good. Just let them move. You know, or even start with, like, if I don't say anything, you're doing it correctly, I'll just give you a couple tweaks I'll give you a couple tweaks along the way, but don't feel like you're doing it wrong if I'm not saying anything. I'm actually just admiring your work, and I'm
just observing. Yeah. I find myself saying continue, you know, like if they look at me like, I'm not going to say good or bad, just continue.
Yes.
You're doing good. Just keep going.
Yes.
If it's bad, I'm going to stop you.
Right. Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about what pandemic life has been for you. What has been the single greatest challenge for you personally during this pandemic?
It's been a time of adventure, actually, where a lot of people have been like shying back. I actually have like two, I call them COVID babies. Like I started my podcast and I opened this studio behind me. So I haven't actually pulled back in any ways. I actually chose to charge ahead while the rest of the world is sleeping.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I felt like
the roar.
Let's keep moving forward. Let's take advantage of this. Like my competitors are licking their wounds right now. So how can I get some ground here? So
Definitely.
Sorry for that killer instinct. This sounds too non-Pilates-esque or Zenish, but like
no, not at all. It's honest.
That's how I looked at it. It's like there's an opportunity, there's a gap, there's some silence. There's a time for me to work on my business instead of working in my business.
Yes.
So how do I now take advantage of the fact that I don't have 8 clients a day coming in to build up my online to foundation before people start to come in? You know what I mean? Like all those different things. So I've been basically pushing forward while everyone slows down to kind of close that gap.
So prior to the pandemic, was any of your studio in existence?
I was in this in High Octane. I was in this. Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I was still in this clinic. Like this gym and clinic was here. But I was I was working for the city of Mississauga, and I had a job, the contract job. So I would just come in before and after work, train a couple clients, and teach my Pilates here, and that's it. So as I recognized that contract was going to be ending and it wasn't going to renew, I started to pour more energy into this business and start to really build it up my contract ended, and at that point I was ready to convert this space into lunch, this lunchroom into like a micro business. And
Yeah.
and then I was already online for a few months doing my core conversations as well. So yeah, I just kept charging
That's
ahead.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Congratulations on like taking adversity and adapting, and
Yes.
just rolling with it. That's really inspiring. I guess in regards to your core conversation,
Mhm.
which I'm going to be on it this Thursday, guys.
I know, so excited.
Tell us a little bit about the intention behind that. How is it going? What have been some of the most important conversations or things that may have come up with
Yeah.
with that passion project?
Absolutely. Passion project, it nails it exactly. So I have to give a shout out to my wife right out the gate for coming up with the name Core
Yay!
Conversations, because like
Good.
she's like my content manager, ideation person, whatever you want to label her as. She'd say like, you know what you should do? I'm like, okay, I'll just do it. Like I just
Right.
blindly do it, and it ends up being awesome. So
That's great.
shout out to her. And it started by like, remember that first week, like last year in Italia, when like everyone was just like freaking out, and then they had like their online classes, and then you switch through every Instagram page and someone was teaching a Pilates class
Yeah, for free.
for free. So during that time, one, I didn't want to just teach for free all day, and two, I didn't want to compete with like Blossom and like all these like big dogs teaching Pilates at that point. So like, okay, you all can do that. I'm gonna come on and just find out like what you're doing and what time you're doing it at.
Hmm.
So then from there is I had conversations with, I actually wasn't even like scheduled conversations. I decided I'm gonna go on to Instagram at like 10 o'clock every day because everyone's home, and just say like, hey, what are you doing today? What time is your class? And
Right.
then it turned into like, what pivots have you made during this quarantine? And then it turned into like, well, what's your ideal client? And then I'd see in the comment section, like, Jason Williams was just on it. Like Charm City was on a second ago. And someone would be like, oh, that's Jason Williams. You need to talk to him. So I was like, and then they would come on and then I have a
Okay.
conversation with them. And then after a while, I started to book people. And then 5 days a week, I'd have a different personality on.
Wow, that's a huge commitment. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. But for me, it's fun. I love conversations. My background isn't counseling, so this is scratching my itch for just building relationship and building
Yep.
rapport. And then I started to get, like Kathy Ross Nash would say yes, and then like DJ starting from scratch would say
I saw
yes,
you
and
had
then
Rael.
Rael was on. Yeah, exactly. So the people that, because we're in a quarantine, they actually do have some time,
Yeah.
said yes. And
Yeah.
I figured by like September, October, people would stop saying yes because they got busy. And a year later, and probably 200 guests later, I'm still doing these like 5 days a week. And
That's amazing. And
next week is my
everyone,
anniversary.
like we should be grateful to you as well as the Pilates community internationally to keep conversations going. And I love that you have all different types of people. It could be really big, notable
Mm,
Pilates professionals to perhaps people that look like perhaps they were certified a little bit, more recently. So it
yes,
really doesn't matter. I think it's just that you're inviting everybody to come together to have somewhere to have discussions. And right now,
love it.
I think many of us, myself included, feel a little bit like a lone wolf because we're not even coming into studios to see fellow
Mm,
instructors. There's just a very kind of vacant lack of community. So
yes.
this is really awesome.
It is. It really is. It's such a blessing. Like, and the people who've
Yeah.
come on, like enthusiasts, like people who aren't even instructors I've had on, like Michael Brown, this guy named Kai, like these gentlemen have taken classes and they've been in the world, but they're not even teachers, but they just are so insightful.
So cool.
And yeah, so and you're asking about some of those takeaways from those conversations
Yeah.
too. Um, you know, People like Jenna Zaffino, when she said like to support, amplify, and connect, and I was like she just kind of said it in passing, and that's been like one of those, those phrases that has stuck with me when it
Yeah,
comes
it's a good
to
one.
addressing like racism, and what do
Yep.
we do with this white supremacy and this privilege and the way that
Yep.
some voices aren't being represented properly and stuff. Is like, well, we need to support, amplify, and connect with those people, like that sort of thing. Or saying
It's so direct. It's so
it's
like
so,
actionable, right?
yes,
And that's
exactly.
like what I'm always looking for is like I want an actionable step. And that's very, I love that.
Right.
It's really
Yeah.
good.
Oh, like honestly, I use that all the time. It's like I drop that line all the time. And the other one too
So
is
can
that,
I ask you a question in
sure,
regards to this?
absolutely.
May I ask if you are a member of the Pilates Method Alliance?
I never have been.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why is because being in Canada, the benefits were, one, to get a discount on your liability insurance,
Right.
which a nominal discount on, something that I can find locally for less. And two was a discount on the conference. And I had no plans of going to Santa Cruz for a conference for
Right.
Pilates. So I didn't see the return on investment on being a part of it.
Yes. Fair enough. Fair enough.
And then their national certification, I didn't see that how having that national certification was going to elevate me in the Pilates world or justify me charging more. Like me charging more is going to be as a result of, my experience,
My education,
my
yeah.
education, my referrals,
Totally.
not just some badge on my wall. So that's the only reason why I was like, I just didn't see the return on investment for that.
Yeah, no, that's completely legit. In terms of, right now it's different, but there are lots of continuing education opportunities out there. Is there anyone that you would really like to study with or to continue studying with? Anything like bucket list-ish related to your Pilates career?
Well, right now I am working with, I have been taking a lot of classes with Jamie White, core star, and she has a teacher training with Pure Body teacher training with Heather
Okay.
Erdman.
I think I've heard of Pure Body before.
Yeah. So there's a few of them. So anyway, so Jamie and I have connected, and she's been teaching me, and I'm just loving it. There's something about just finding someone who like just gets your body. She was working with some guys in the NFL in the past, and just understand. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of people that do, but like it just so happens that I've connected with her, and she's been so good for my body. So I'm learning a lot from her that I'm taking out to my clients, and I'm sure they're not too thrilled that I keep throwing new stuff at them. But
when you give that look of like, we're gonna do something exciting today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. The clients know that one.
Yes, and also through the conversations that I have, like there's so many conversations that I've had, encore conversations where I've started to look at things differently. Like when I ask someone like who their ideal client is, and someone says something like somebody who is curious and courageous. My answer is like a guy. My answer is something that's really succinct. And then
Hold on, I have it right here. You said that Martin has made his mission to introduce more men to Pilates. Everyone needs Pilates in their exercise regime. So it's not surprising that like your client avatar is other men because you can relate to them. You have had perhaps that experience of like, seeing the Pilates equipment, maybe being a little bit intimidated, and I think that's really important, that relatability.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not even necessarily that the equipment was intimidating, if the cues were intimidating. If we still go back to the cue conversation. Yeah, because like imagine being a guy in a class and they say roll down to your bra line.
Yeah, I hate that cue.
Right? Like you start throwing
it needs to be done with.
These gender-centric cues, like they're not helping bring more men into the room.
For sure.
Right?
I mean, I just could imagine like how I would feel if I was in a jiu-jitsu all men class and they like gave some sort of a male cue. I'd be like, oh, it's already so hard for me to be here with like 20 other men, right?
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So so just being sensitive to those things. Yeah.
Is there any kind of modifications that you have discovered on your own in regards to the system as a man? Is there anything that you have innovated to make certain things more, I don't want to say comfortable, but like
accommodating?
Yeah, accommodating.
Yes and no. Like I haven't really strayed too much from the work now that I'm really diving into the classical. Like I do spend a lot of time on movement prep, and that's like what I've taken from my sport conditioning world, where a dynamic warm-up does more for you than anything. So I may spend a lot of time in movement prep or pre-Pilates, so to speak, before getting into an exercise. So it's not that I've accommodated anything, but I've respected the fact that a male body may be tighter in the hip flexors or tighter with hamstrings. If I'm working with a basketball player who's tall, that he's looking down on the world. So maybe we need to focus more on their thoracic extension than anything. So it's just being sensitive to being curious as to where they are in their space, but then taking some of those kind of cues from other people and saying, okay, well, let's just take a shot and just spend the whole day on thoracic extension. And let's find all the different places in the work where you can get that extension that you need, as opposed to saying one exercise, then the next, then the next, then the next. There's time.
Absolutely.
There's time for both. So I think that's really not necessarily a question of accommodating.
I feel like you should say that again, because it's so important what you just said. Like, it's not about
the next. Right.
Say it again. It was so
good. Well, there's times to find, to find the work, find the same exercise at different places in the work, as opposed to just going like by rote memory, this exercise, then this exercise, then this exercise.
Yes.
So, and before I sound like a hypocrite, because I've said the opposite, that it's important to understand and respect the order. There's a piece to that too, where our clients respect the fact that if you give them the same order week over week, they could celebrate their progress, because they could realize that they didn't
have that success and ownership.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I was able to roll up, this week, and last week I was stuck on it, or I had to, whatever it is, like all these different things that happen, they can recognize the checkpoints.
It's not hypocritical. I think the answer is like, it depends.
It really
Sometimes
depends.
It's important to do the flow or to do a particular progression, and other times it's like, no, we're going to stop and we're going to literally investigate thoracic extension for 30 minutes, and that's equally as good.
Absolutely.
I think maybe is what you're, also pointing at.
100%.
Yeah.
I would see guys on the gym floor, and when I was a personal trainer, I had so much respect for those trainers that would dive deep on a squat. Like, so one trainer may have a person do 15 exercises in an hour, and then the other guy who is really passionate about his craft has the person do one exercise in the whole hour, but they've spent time on hip opening, they spent time on their ankle mobility, spent time on their hip mobility. So by the time you dive deep on the one piece, they may have done 50 things, but they walk away only doing squats that day, and they feel amazing. I think we can do the same thing with our Pilates. Like, we don't have to rattle off the order. We can dive deep on one thing for that day, so that they come back to the order, come back to their work and flow, and they move better.
I agree. So then the Pilates Body Workout motto is move better, feel better. And I think you would agree. Do you find in your own body that when you move better, you generally feel better? Do you see this in your clients? What's your take?
Yes, that motto is perfect, because if people ask, like a friend of mine would say this, like, if you say, I'm doing this because I want a great body. Well, what's a great body? And he would say a great body is a body that moves well, feels good, and is pain-free. Like, we're not, at no point do we get into aesthetics. It's having a six-pack. It's having, like, that stuff is periphery to moving well and feeling good, right? So, I totally agree with that. If I personally feel good, and for that is like performance, like everything's measured by performance. So I don't necessarily have to, look a certain way, but if my body can't do what I want it to do when I want it to do it, then we have a problem.
That's interesting. So this might be a tough question, but I think you can handle it. If you were to poll your current students, clients, and ask them why they practice Pilates, what do you think their answer would be? What do you think, like, the unanimous kind of answer would be?
They would say to feel better.
Yay! I thought so.
Yeah, they would totally say. One would say to improve their posture. Okay. And everyone else would say to feel better.
Yeah. I think that is a common thread that I have heard recently, is like, people feel good doing Pilates, and like, it could be pain-free. It could be like, oh, okay, my abs are great or whatever, but like, there's just like a feel good thing about it. Absolutely. And I'm so proud to teach it, like, just because people feel that way.
Absolutely. We have an amazing honor to be able to teach people Pilates. Like, we've been given this great wisdom base, and someone's entrusted their body to us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have both of these things, and now we're giving that to you, and they're like, okay, what next? Like, that's amazing. Like, that's why I love it. Yeah.
Totally. So do your family members practice Pilates?
They do. And it's funny that you said, I was going to go into that, but I thought, let me just hold back, and then you went there anyway. So,
we don't have to, but.
No, I'm totally down to. My dad used to come in pre-COVID, him and his buddies. I'd have him and two of his other West Indian friends coming
God,
in
that's awesome.
at
I hope
5
you have
o'clock.
footage of this.
Oh, I do. It's all over my Real Men Do Pilates page. Like,
Okay, I have to check it out.
yeah, Fitz, Anthony, and my dad at 5 o'clock in the morning on Tuesdays for like 2 years straight. They come in, they trash talk each other, they'd work hard, they'd leave in a sweat, they go, and it was just fun. And it was an honor, an absolute honor to teach my dad Pilates. This is cool. Think about it. Like, this is the person that like raised you, and now they're deferring their wisdom and their years on this earth to you and your craft. Like, that's really like great. Huge.
Plus, like, you're working to keep him well and healthy and living for as long as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the bad news is that we have run out of time. The good news is that this was so great. I'm so grateful that you agreed to be on Candid Conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we just kind of got the tip of the iceberg, and perhaps we'll schedule you back for a part 2 of this conversation.
Right. Or we can maybe continue this conversation on Thursday, perhaps.
Yes, everyone, make sure you join us on Martin's channel, Personal Victory, on Thursday. I want to say, do we know what time we did? 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
But from me to you, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and to share your experiences and pearls of wisdom. And happy Tuesday.
Yes, this was so fun. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to chatting with you some more.
Sounds good. Happy Tuesday. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.